What's good? It's your boy Fanon. Okay, man, I'm going to talk about these welterweights. I am so happy that all this stuff is going on with the welterweights this uh, over the last couple weeks. And Keith Thurman, who made his return to the boxing world in the commentating as a commentator on the undercard for the Sean Porter Danny Garcia fight. There's something that he said that I wanted to talk about, man. I want to talk about Keith Thurman's place in the welterweight division, some things he said about Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford and Jeff Horn, man. I thought it's funny and it's worth talking about because honestly, man, I think one of the best things that could happen for the welterweight division right now is the return of Keith, once upon a time, formerly known as one time Thurman, the once and maybe future king of the welterweight division. And before I get into that, though, I want to thank everybody who's subscribed for tuning in again to the channel. Man, I really, really appreciate you guys' support. Also, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can be notified when we release more videos and when we do the live streams. And again, thank you to everybody that supports the channel by watching the ads that are in the videos. Thank you to the people, and because that's how we generate revenue for the channel and the cause that we want to support. Also, thank you to everybody that supports on the Venmo, Patreon, and the Super Chats in the live streams. So again, thank you very much. And also remember, 78 Sports TV will be back, and we're going to be doing a Super Chat challenge. I got a partner that I'm going to be working with. Should be making an announcement about that soon and how we're going to take care of that, but keep your eyes open for that. Keith Thurman. Talking that good stuff, man. That good stuff that don't mean nothing until you get in the ring. But one thing I can say about Keith Thurman can fight, man. Okay, Keith Thurman can fight. People can talk a lot of stuff about how Keith Thurman has been playing around, ducking Errol Spence Jr., getting hurt here, getting hurt there. But one thing people should acknowledge is that Keith Thurman can fight, man. And if Keith Thurman is at his best, because I think Danny Garcia can fight, I think Sean Porter can fight, and Keith Thurman made pretty much easy work of both of those dudes. Not super easy work. I mean, there were moments when there was some question to it or whatever, but Keith Thurman is clearly better than Danny Garcia. He's clearly better than the WBC champion in that's holding his belt in Sean Porter. And again, man, just like Errol Spence said, man, he's like people keep forgetting that it was Keith Thurman who was the man, and Keith Thurman is a top man. That dude can fight. He's a world-class fighter. And if Keith Thurman comes back, looks good, then people are going to talk about, hey, what about Errol Spence and Keith Thurman? So one of the things I like about Errol Spence Jr., man, is that he keeps his eyes on the prize as far as who he wants to fight. And he's not doing a lot of Johnny-come-lately stuff, man. So Keith Thurman, funny dude, man. That's all kind of jokes you can make about Keith Thurman, but you can't say the guy can't fight. Was quoted talking to media this Saturday, man. He said, I'm quoting a Boxing Scene article by Victor Salazar, by the way. So shout out to Victor Salazar. He says, in a few weeks, there should be an announcement. I'm hoping to get good news from my doctor, and then we should hopefully be able to negotiate a new date. You might hear something you're going to like. When I got back to camp, talking about what happened before, he said, when I got back to camp, we injured our hand. It's called bone bruising, and it put me on the bench. There were times I thought I was feeling quicker, and I would spar, and it would hurt. The doctor said, I'm not going to get better until you rest it. My motto don't change. I got to know. I'm not afraid to let it go. Most people don't know ish about boxing and I don't really enjoy quoting Mayweather, but it's real. I haven't been in the ring in a while, and my next fight is going to be a tune-up and a rematch with Porter is a respectable fight. It's not to act like it's not a respectable fight is dumb. At the end of the day, why do they want Keith and Spence? Number one versus number two. They want to see it. Spence is number two. He deserves to be number two. If there wasn't Keith Thurman, Spence would be number one. I don't think Crawford fought any welterweight yet. To me, he's barely a champion. That Australian gave me that Australian, Jeff Horn, give me one eye and one arm and I'd beat him too. So that last part's true. Now, maybe not the one arm, but one eye, Keith Thurman could probably beat. With a bad eye, swollen eye, yeah, Keith Thurman could still probably beat Jeff Horn. But as far as who's the number one and number two heavyweight, not heavyweight, welterweight. Let me address a couple things he says first. Is Keith Thurman versus Sean Porter a respectable fight? Absolutely, it's a respectable fight. Keith Thurman is a welterweight champion, former unified welterweight champion, and deserved to be welterweight champion until the rise of Errol Spence. In my opinion, there's no question about who the number one welterweight was. It was Keith Thurman. And if you take the man at his word and say, hey, man, these things are injuries. He's been out a while in injury. He's he's been out a while because of injuries or ducking, whatever you believe it may be. The fact of the matter is this dude has not been beaten in the ring, and he beat Danny Garcia. He beat Sean Porter, and this dude, Keith Thurman, can fight. Keith Thurman, when he talks about Terence Crawford, saying he doesn't think he's a welterweight, I do believe that a lot of people skip over Keith Thurman as if Keith Thurman is it's easy to do because he hasn't been active. But there's no guarantee Terence Crawford is going to beat Keith Thurman. Oh, so yeah, is that right? Yeah, there's no guarantee that Terence Crawford is going to beat Keith Thurman. And that's a fight that I think would be a very interesting fight. I think Errol Spence Jr. beats Keith Thurman, but there's no guarantee there either, man. Keith Thurman can fight. And if he says that he's the number one welterweight, look, man, I'm going to take some heat on this, but I told people in my live stream, look, if I have to choose between Sean Porter being a ducking Errol Spence Jr. and having the belt and all that, man, at least Keith Thurman has already beat the other dudes. So I'd rather have Keith Thurman back, man, because at least Keith Thurman, you don't know what's going to happen if Keith Thurman fights Errol Spence. You believe that I believe that I know Errol Spence will beat him, but I got enough respect for Keith Thurman as a fighter to say, hey, man, there's a chance that Keith Thurman might be able to outbox him. And same thing goes for Terence Crawford. And I agree with I definitely agree with what Keith Thurman said in that regard about him he got stripped of the belt, but if you take that away, then Errol Spence, then he would be the number one welterweight. And the shame of the matter is that Errol Spence Jr. is that because Keith Thurman is inactive for whatever reason, Errol Spence has not been able to prove that he's the number one welterweight by beating Keith Thurman. People now are giving him that title, and I would be one to give it to him as well. But as soon as Keith Thurman gets active, look, man, I gotta be consistent. I gotta be consistent with what I say about Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is the lineal heavyweight champion, according to the way that most people interpret that, right? So when he comes back, if Deontay Wilder beats him, Deontay Wilder beats the lineal champion. And there's a lot of reasons why, that Tyson Fury didn't. The reason why Tyson Fury hasn't been fighting, not different than Keith Thurman's situation, and a little bit longer, not much longer, but a little bit longer. But still, the belts that are held by Anthony Joshua, in my opinion, those are still rightfully belong to Tyson Fury. I know there are people going to be talking about getting stripped and this and that, whatever, man. I'm not living my life and what I think about boxers based on sanctioning bodies, because they make whatever decision they feel is best for them that day, and inconsistency is not a concern with them. They have no problem doing one thing for one person, doing something totally different in the same circumstance, where the only difference is that it's a fighter that they might not think is a big money dude. So, or whatever reason, or the promoter's not pushing it, whatever the deal is. So, but Keith Thurman so when Keith Thurman says, look, that Terence Crawford's barely a welterweight, this is what I'll say about that. And I was going to do a separate video on it. When people compare the record of Terence Crawford and the record of Errol Spence Jr., and I listened to somebody go through and talk about how, he fought this guy was an Olympic gold medalist. This guy was undefeated. This guy was a world champion. This guy was ranked higher, right? And go through like 5 or 6 people, 7 people, like, the Postals and the Felix Diaz, Ricky Burns, Ray Beltran, right? All those guys, right? And then they look and they say, okay, well, what has Errol Spence done? And they say, okay, Kell Brook, right? None of those got the difference between Kell Brook and everybody that you can mention that was legitimate that Terence Crawford beat is that Kell Brook is a welterweight. And I don't think what you do against somebody like a Ricky Burns at 135 pounds or Beltran at 135 pounds is any indication of what you're going to do when you're fighting a guy at welterweight. Skill wise, it might tell you what you have the capability to do and all that. But until you actually see somebody in there in the ring with a guy that's that much bigger and stronger than them, you never know what's going to happen. If you look at what Sadam Ali can do in a ring as a boxer, like if he was at 140 pounds, right? If he was Sadam Ali is fighting at 140 pounds, he can look good at 140 pounds. There's a lot of guys he could beat at 140 pounds. I wouldn't doubt if Sadam Ali could get a belt at 140 pounds. But what happens at 100 when he lucks up and fights an old dude at 154 pounds and Mikel Cotto will get his hands on a belt, and then some young dude, he gets in there with a guy that he just cannot handle the punishment from. Jaime Munguia might not be that much more of a skilled fighter than Sadam Ali, but he's just a hell of a lot bigger and a heck of a lot stronger, and that comes into play. So you can't judge what Terence Crawford is going to do at 147 off of what he did at 135. That's apples and oranges. You know what I mean? So anyways, like saying you got a German Shepherd that can fight, and he just he beat a Doberman, but then you got to okay, well, throw him in there with a pit bull, right? Just too big. It's two different breeds of dogs, man. 135 pounds is a different beast than 147 pounds. 140 is a different beast than 147 pounds. And Terence Crawford wouldn't be the first one to realize in the ring with a real 147 pounder, somebody that started their career there, that look, man, these dudes hit a lot harder, especially if they're as fast and they're tenacious and your punches ain't hurting them and you sticking your tongue out, instead of sticking your tongue out and being able to counter, you get hit with some shit that you feel. Man, that stuff can all change up. So anyway, man, so I got to respect Keith Thurman until otherwise. Like I said, man, I know a lot of people, I'm going to piss a lot of people off on my channel who aren't big supporters of Keith Thurman. But look, man, I want to see this dude back. I think he's good for the welterweight division. And prepare to talk bad about me in the comment section. And with that, hey, man, again, man, we can't always agree on everything, man, but I'm going to let you know what I think. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell icon, man. And then we'll check you later. And I'm out. Peace.